The June 9th, 2020 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Briner,
Here.
Mr. Buckley,
Here.
Ms. Bisling,
Present.
Mr. Tuttle.
Here.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the
of the United States of America
and
and
to
the
the
republic
for which
for
it
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
I would like to welcome everyone to the June 9th, 2020 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education. Prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval via the district's paperless Board of Education agenda system, Board Docs. The public can access the agenda through the school's district's website. The agenda is available through the district's website for public viewing the Sunday prior to the board meeting. Board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and chief financial officer for information concerning agenda items and to request, if needed, additional information. This meeting is being video conferenced live and can be accessed at youtube.com/user/Cardinal TV Mentor Ohio. Tonight's meeting will not have public participation. The public can email the board members, superintendent, and chief financial officer with any comments and questions. Email addresses and a telephone number can be found on the website www.mentorschools.net. This meeting is being televised on a delayed basis and will be shown on Spectrum Cable, channel 1026 in Mentor, and channel 1025 on Mentor on the Lake. This meeting is also being videotaped and will be shown on our YouTube channel, Cardinal TV Mentor Ohio. Please place your mobile telephones on silent mode during the meeting. Next on the agenda is the appointment of a board member. It is recommended that the resolution appointing Mrs. Ambreen Hanson to fill the vacancy by reason of resignation be approved. Could I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we need the judge to administer the oath.
I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to do this oath of office. Are we ready? Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Ambreen Hassan,
Do hereby swear
do hereby swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
faithfully perform and discharge
faithfully perform and discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
as a member of
as a member of
the Mentor Exempted Village School
the Mentor Exempted Village School
District Board of Education.
District Board of Education.
Congratulations. Virtual.
Thank you.
hand.
Thank you so much.
And I wish you the best, and I want to thank all of you for the service that you give our communities. The children are so important, and we thank you for all that you do.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Judge.
Your
Clement.
Honor.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the following meetings: May 12th, 2020, May 19th, 2020, May 21st, 2020, and May 26th, 2020. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes. Next on the agenda is suspension of policy 1.12. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes. Next on the agenda is Mr. Porter, the superintendent's report and recommendations. Mr. Porter.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. I have the following recommendations listed under the consent agenda and recommend approval of items 6A1 through 6A2.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
I had one question about the renovation of the music wing. I wondered kind of what the timeline was for that, if you know.
The timeline, last I talked with Jen and Mike, who are working on that, would be ready right around the middle of August.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the board, I have the following Board of Education policies on the agenda for a second reading and recommend approval of all policies.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second,
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. President and members of the board, at this time, I would like to present feedback on a remote learning that was initiated as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So at this time, on your screen, you should see our presentation should be taking over your screen here for the next couple of minutes.
It is.
Perfect. In May, we administered the Bright Bite survey, which is a survey, and you've probably heard of it. We've been administering that at least once a year since 2014 in all of our school buildings. And that goes to students, staff, and parents. And there are 4 basic areas that it covers: information, around information, technology, and learning. And that includes classroom access, skills, and environment. This year, because learning was so different, we did make some modifications to the survey because we were very specifically looking to gather certain information specific to what the online learning was like at home from, through the eyes of the different stakeholders. And we had an amazing turnout in terms of responses. Almost 3,000 parents responded. You can see there almost 3,000 students, almost 2,000 parents, and 373 teachers responded to this survey this year. And I want to go over some questions with you, just so you get a sense of, some of the feelings about the online learning specifically. So we won't go over every question, but these are some, these are some of the categories that jumped out at us. For high school and middle school students, we asked, what kind of a device was used, and a school provided device was used in 94% of the cases. In 19% of the cases, also an additional device from home, 10% a cell phone. You could see from that question, because it adds up to more than 100, that they could pick more than one answer. So that's why it doesn't equal 100. And then for elementary students, they did not have their devices immediately because elementary devices by nature are not taken home each and every day. So we can keep better track of them for the elementary students. And we're also able to keep them charged into a charging station. However, we were able to make them available to any parent that signed up in a certain window that we kept open. And our IT department did an amazing job of distributing over 1,200 devices to students and parents who asked for those on the elementary level. And so how they ended up was 68% used their own devices at home, 35% were able to use a school device that they picked up, and then small percentage other ways. How many hours a day were you spending on learning? So this one went to our secondary level, high school and middle school. And a vast majority, you can see about 90% fell within that 1 to 5 hour range, with 9% of students spending more than 5 hours a day and 2% of students spending no time at all. And then we asked the same question of elementary. And there again, we had a percentage, actually it was over 90%, that fell within the 1 to 5 hour mark, although more students in the elementary, we're in that 1 to 2 hour range with 59%. Safety, as you know, is our #1 priority. So the question, I feel safe while participating in remote learning, high school and middle school, either always or usually, well over 90%. So we felt good about that. We have the right protections and filters in place. And then same question at the elementary level. And again, it was over 90%, feeling safe while participating in remote learning.
Mhm.
During remote learning, I feel supported and get help from my teachers. If you combine those top two categories, 82% felt that way, which again is very good. 15% sometimes, 3% never. Again, that's high school and middle school, this particular question. And on the elementary level, 73% always, 19% usually, and 7% and 2% for sometimes and never. Asking the parents, can your child access the internet for remote learning? We're very pleased to see 98% could.
Wow.
Nobody said no, and 2% sometimes. And we did make hotspots available with the help of a Mentor Public Library to the very few families that did not have internet service and asked for a hotspot. So Mr. Lynch was able to deliver those. And so I think this one accurately portrays hopefully what it should have been. To parents, how many hours a day is your child spending remote learning? 95% felt it was within that 1 to 5 hour range. And this looks like it was everybody, all three levels on this question, with a small percentage more than 5 hours a day. And to parents, again, this is all levels. I feel safe having my child participate in remote learning. Their answers really mirrored the answers of the students, and 96% felt yes, which we're very proud about. 3% sometimes, 1% never. So a large majority felt safe. It is easy for my child to get their assignments. This one also fell just over 90%, with sometimes coming in about 9%. And with our student learning our learning management systems at each level, students should be able to access their assignments and parents should be able to see that as well. And then parents were asked, my child can get help with schoolwork when needed. And again, combining, 60 and 31%, 91% total, always or usually, with sometimes coming in at 9%. We asked certified staff, how often you use a learning management system to deliver instruction? And that's the thing, that's the platform where you can issue assignments. You could put videos on there. It's basically sort of your one-stop shop for the class to access what you need. And you can see always or usually it came in at 93%. We're using Schoology, Google Classroom, Seesaw as our learning management systems. And to staff, how many hours a day are you spending on remote learning? Staff works hard. 58% more than 5 hours a day, 34% in that 3 to 5 hour range. And then to the staff, I can meet my district's objectives for remote learning. And again, either and always or usually fell above 90%.
Wow.
So some of the big takeaways, and there were comments also, and Mr. Lynch and some others from the curriculum department and the IT department spent considerable time going over, all of the comments and reading, and some of the big takeaways. And we will learn, we learn for next time too. Some of this are lessons that we can apply. Students need their own devices. So for the elementary level, we've got to find a way to get all of the student devices in the hands, even if there are devices at home. A lot of times parents and children were possibly competing for the same device at the same time. Another takeaway, students and parents feel safe with their online learning. That was very clear. All stakeholders worked very hard at this from March to May. I think we did as well as we could have, given the quick pivot that everyone had to make. Many comments were made about the power of lessons that were conducted using Zoom or Google Hangout, which in essence is sort of like the Zoom we're on now, but apply that to a classroom lesson. A lot of learning could very well continue in that format. And to me, one of the biggest takeaways, students and teachers really missed each other. And parents noticed that too. And so that speaks to the power, I think, of relationships. So that's sort of a 2.5 month look back at some of the outcomes of remote learning through the eyes of 3 very critical stakeholders.
Mr. Porter, the relationship piece, not only did that affect how they were feeling about each other, but I'm making the assumption that it also affected children's achievement levels, that relationship piece does a lot more than just, build that relationship with the teacher, but it also affects student outcomes.
No doubt about that. And I think with the relationship piece, that also applied to all levels. It wasn't just an elementary thing. And that may be the level where it might look more obvious. Even our middle schoolers and our high schoolers and their teachers all missed each other.
Yep.
Anything else on that before we move on?
I really appreciate the overall cooperative effort. It took everybody. It took the kids buying in. It took parents, readjusting their home schedules and trying hard to make sure that their kids were getting the structural support that they needed to be successful. And I know our staff and administrators worked just endless hours trying to compensate for anything that wasn't successful or trying to figure out other ways to make it work better. And I'm so grateful that this is our community, that there's this cooperative spirit that made it possible. I'm sure not everywhere is as lucky as we are to have a team approach.
I can't agree more.
Yeah.
So thank you. Now I would like to share information pertaining to the 2021 school year. So we had a look back and now a look ahead. And the 2021 school year, of course, takes into consideration concerns related to COVID-19. So as you can see from the Bright Bites survey we just reviewed, that will undoubtedly help us to get ready even for the 2021 school year. As you are probably aware, school districts around the state are waiting on guidelines from Governor DeWine's office, the Ohio Department of Health, and the Ohio Department of Education. These guidelines will determine what education will look like in the 2021 school year, really all over the state of Ohio. Since COVID-19 began to affect our region in March, our goal has always been for students to return to school as soon as they can safely do so. That's not changed. And we also recognize the profound implications of students remaining at home for any additional time. That said, we also recognize there are very different views about how parents and guardians feel about their children returning to school. We have been advised to plan for several possibilities, including children returning to school full-time with some restrictions, children returning to school part-time due to social distancing requirements in classrooms and on buses, and children continuing full-time or full online learning from home. While parents just took the Bright Bites to reflect back on the past 2.5 or 3 months, we have developed an additional quick survey to ask parents and guardians key questions about the coming year. This survey will be released tomorrow by way of an email blast and can be filled out anytime until 5:00 p.m. next Wednesday, June 17th. There will be questions ranging from the level of comfort about sending their children back to school. There will be additional questions about transportation, learning concerns, online learning, about the school calendar, and other topics that are critical we hear from the parents about. While we have already begun planning for several options, the guidelines from the state, the Bright Bites survey data from all of our stakeholders, and the survey data from the parents this coming week will help us to make the best decisions possible for the 2021 school year. We will communicate as much as we can, as soon as we can, but we are also told to expect conditions to change. So we really, all year, I think, have to be in a state of readiness for almost anything. And I think everyone, it goes without saying, these are tough times. And because, especially because we're planning for the unknown. Just the same, I feel like we have incredible support, starting with our Board of Education, our staff, our parents, our students, our community. It's been cliche the past few months to hear how we're all in this together, right? But I think we're really living that out right now. So while the upcoming year has more questions than answers, and it will certainly have its challenges, Mentor will do again what it does best, which will be to rise above the adversity. So with that, I wanted to especially sort of underscore the fact that the survey, it would be coming out tomorrow, and we're certainly going to, hope for, again, high participation from our parents.
Well, Bill, that is really in the right direction, all of it. And to do another additional survey, the parents have the greatest number of questions, obviously, and not all have the same questions. And the more results that you can get back in this next one and add it to the one you've already received, it's just information, not only the information we need, you need, and your staff needs, but the parents gain confidence by you asking the questions in the survey, and the way that which it points them in a direction that answers their questions, or at least quells some of their concerns right now, knowing that you're considering it, that you're considering all these options that could fall into place, because they're sitting there many times for the last 3 months. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And taking this proactive is just fantastic. It's going to make them really feel more comfortable and just assuage their concerns to some degree that it's all going to work out, and they've had input into it, and most will agree with the direction we take. I would assume, because they gave you information, they've given us their response. It's fantastic.
I will say, even when they give us our answers, a lot of what they'll be asked to do, what we'll be asked to do, it won't be easy for anybody. But it's important to hear the voices, and not every community, the messages are not the same from every community, and we need at the end of the day to do what best fits, mentor schools.
Well, Bill, the key word here, I guess you could call, is collaboration. They're not sitting there unknown. They still don't know the final outcome, but you've heard, you've listened, we're listening. And that's what collaboration is about, correct? We can't do it in a vacuum.
And the other thing, Mr. Porter, is when we have data from our own community and our own parents, that will help us sift out the kind of information that's been coming in from other places other than our own community. And I think it's important that we focus on what our community wants.
Do you have a timeline, Bill, for when you would imagine you'll have something in place as to, especially if something is going to change with start times or options being available? Do you have that kind of framed in your mind?
There's some decisions I feel like we could make sooner than later. If we change the calendar back for a series of reasons, it might make sense for this year to move the start date back. If we did that, we would want to probably announce that sooner than later. And that would not necessarily affect a lot of other aspects of the plan. Some aspects of the plan, we have to, quite frankly, wait for some of the guidelines from the state. We heard it could be a couple more weeks. We also heard it could be sometime in July. If it's sometime in July, it's going to be tough for us to make a plan without definitive. We can have a lot of drafts ready to go in the background, but it would not make sense to fully release that without knowing that some of these guidelines are truly in effect. The other thing, and I have to say, there may be different iterations of the plan that come out, because we could come out with something in mid-July, for instance, and conditions change dramatically for the better, for the worse. However, by mid-August, we may have to pivot again, just like we did in March, and move away from, even a well-oiled plan. So the key word, I think, all summer, and it's not usually how we function. We like to give people as much information as soon as we can, and we will do that again with this. But this time we're relying on so many external factors that will drive decisions.
And another factor is, based on what's happened from the governor's office already, guidelines come out and then political pressure is applied and the guidelines sometimes change. So we have to be flexible.
That's for sure.
Well, I appreciate all the work that has gone into making these adjustments, preparations, and preliminary planning. And I love the idea of getting feedback from the community. That should be helpful, at least if you're drafting any kind of plan.
Thank you. I will share those questions with you in this week's update also, so you can see what we're asking.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
There are no other questions on that. I would like to present information on our strategic plan. And what we're going to do here is show a 12-minute video produced by Kristen Kirby and Liz Rutkowski. And we're using this as an alternative to the annual in-person strategic meeting that we have, sort of our annual update, because of course, social distancing and COVID. But we still wanted to keep the spirit of the video the same as the presentation, and sort of do a one-year look back at the major initiatives and accomplishments in each area of our strategic plan. and do a 1-year look ahead in terms of what's being planned. Because even though we've been disrupted by COVID from March to May, and even though we don't know exactly what the school year brings, we are determined to stay the course with our strategic plan. And while we may have to make some adjustments in it because of COVID, the big picture items remain intact, and we believe in those, and we have goals for those and strategies. So we are going to stay the course with our plan and adjust accordingly as needed. So I'll let the video do the talking for the next 12 minutes. And then, as you can see, we have a lot of the other administrative team members here if you happen to have any questions at the end.
I don't have any sound. What's up?
Mr. Porter, I just want to check if you can unmute your microphone.
Okay, it's
When
done.
it played, did you hear the sound? Mr. Tuttle came across and said he could not hear the sound.
I can now.
I could not hear the sound either, but I just unmuted my microphone.
Okay, I'm going to have you mute again, and we're going to try it one more time.
Okay. At that time, we rewrote our strategic plan to make it our guidepost for the next several years. Our mission of inspiring students today to reach their potential tomorrow continues to drive our work in 4 major areas: safety, education, resources, and community partnerships. We continually develop goals in these areas that meet the mission and vision of our schools. Ordinarily, we would present our annual update in person to the committee, and I would then present it at a board meeting. But this year, as we work through the challenges of COVID, we have produced this video to give you a 1-year look back at major things accomplished this year in each area, and we will take a 1-year look out to see what's ahead and plan for each area. We'll start with our first goal, safety, with Mrs. Skolsky.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Good afternoon, and thank you for watching. Our #1 priority here in Mentor Schools is to provide a safe learning environment where students can grow academically, socially, and emotionally. I am excited to share with you some of our accomplishments this year. In the summer of 2019, we held our most sophisticated safety drill to date. A full-scale active shooter drill took place at Mentor High School. Participating in the drill were Mentor School staff and students, Mentor Fire Department, Mentor Police Department, and emergency responders from other local agencies. This drill allowed us the opportunity to practice our responses, set up our own command center, and make real-life decisions. This year, we expanded our service with Securely, our online monitoring program. This program monitors online student activity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The enhancements provide immediate notification to administration via text messages, emails, or phone calls. The level of alert determines the way our staff is notified. Our partnerships with NAMI and Crossroads of Mentor were expanded this year. NAMI experts have been in our schools working with our students in grades 7 through 12, and parent programs were offered. Wellness funds allowed us to expand our partnership with Crossroads, allowing for a full-time Crossroads counselor in all of our schools. For the first time, a kindness rally event was held for all of our 4th and 5th grade students in the Fine Arts Center. The peer leader model was used, and it focused on kindness, acceptance, diversity, and inclusion. Our hope is that they will share what they learned with the younger students in their school buildings. Next year, we will continue our partnership with Crossroads, focusing on student and staff well-being and trauma. We are excited to expand our See Something, Say Something program to the middle school level, which will allow students to anonymously report concerns through their school-issued device. We will offer Alice Train the Trainer program training to district staff. We will be working closely with state and local organizations to implement guidelines and protocols to ensure the health and safety of our students and staff with the coronavirus pandemic. Next up is Mrs. Bonas.
Thank you, Mrs. Skulski. The Education Committee was tasked with creating a plan aligned to the vision of providing students with a balanced, high-quality education. The committee developed 3 goals. Our first goal is engaging students in a comprehensive curriculum that is relevant and responsive. This past year, our math and literacy steering committees implemented district improvement plans focusing on the standards for mathematical practice and the components of comprehensive literacy. Teachers engaged in very professional development activities, including monthly study groups, grade level PD, and co-teaching. Next year, in addition to development plans, the math and literacy committees will create monitoring tools to monitor implementation progress. Additionally, the 6th through 12 science teachers receive training focused on creating, writing, sharing, and defending experimental findings. Next year, science inquiry training will be provided for grades 3 through 5, and common labs will be developed and implemented. Our second goal focuses on research-based instruction. This past year, we provided all staff members the opportunity to target an area of technology they wish to. Differentiated topics included learning management systems such as Seesaw, Google Classroom, and Schoology, interactive video tools, and assistive technology. We will provide expanded choice offerings this coming school year for all staff in order to deepen their knowledge and use of technology. Additionally, our special education department continued to refine our work with response to intervention in grades K through 5 for students in the areas of reading, math, and/or behavior. As we move into the 21 school year, we will review and implement RTI at the high school and continue to refine K-8 processes by improving our monitoring tools. The final goal focuses on developing student supports that encourage self-direction, confidence, and adaptability. This past year, we developed a real-world learning committee that convened quarterly. The committee conducted a needs assessment and established a district vision for real-world learning, including a continuum of grade-level appropriate activities and experiences for students. Next year, we plan to communicate the vision and develop a 3-year implementation plan, which includes expanding internships and deepening career exploration. Enhancing climate in our buildings was also a focus this year. Staff engaged in professional development, including responsive classroom at the elementary level and a transition program at the middle school called Where Everyone Belongs. At the high school level, a monthly advisory period was developed. Next year, the focus will be to improve high school advisory by providing teachers with additional training to implement best practices and provide advisory on a weekly basis. The Education Committee is constantly monitoring and adjusting our plans based on the needs of our students, staff, and community. Now we will go back to Mr. Porter with resources.
In the area of resources, much was accomplished this past year. In fall, we conducted our first full enrollment study since 2016 to better understand, based on data, trends, and statistical information, what is expected in the next 10 years. The study projected that we would mostly hold steady with our student numbers A. Hoynes School for our CARES program, and we renovated the IT wing of the administration building. We also provided furniture upgrades for all third grade classrooms in the district. As we studied our capital project needs going forward, in addition to using our permanent improvement funding, the board committed to using a portion of the district's underspending of the budget and a portion of the overcollection of revenue to fund future projects. These past 2 months, we also began to adjust our budget account for financial changes resulting from COVID-19. As we look ahead to the coming year, our capital plans include renovation of Mentor High's music wing, second grade furniture upgrades, and construction of a concession building and laboratories for the high school sports spectators. We will weigh our options for what we need to do with Garfield Elementary, and we will need to carefully continue to monitor the financial implications for our district based on the COVID situation. The good news is that our prudent fiscal habits have positioned us well to respond to the unpredictable financial effects of the virus. Next, I'll hand things over to Kristen Kirby to talk about community partnerships.
Thanks, Mr. Porter. Hi, everyone, and thanks for watching. Encouraging strong community partnerships is the topic I get to talk about, which we've already heard a lot about, sprinkled here and there throughout the other initiatives. Our community, the relationships we build, all of our stakeholders and partners working together to support our students is absolutely vital to our success in Mentor schools. We've completed some exciting goals under this umbrella this year. I'll start with the new website. Communication from us to you needs to be clear and easily accessible. We understand that information needs to be provided on an array of platforms and even pushed directly to people most of the time. But having a strong website is really important, a place to house all of that information. The new and improved district site and all of our school sites launched in January. My favorite part about the new website is it was designed to create online web-driven newsletters. This is a much more efficient way to share information because the website and newsletter content is created simultaneously rather than as two separate projects. Next year, we're expanding the website platform to include career tech. That'll be found at lakeshorecompact.org. Also looking ahead, we'll be able to expand the online newsletter offerings as well. Finding unique ways to showcase Mentor schools is a goal we take a lot of pride in. An exciting highlight on that front from earlier this year is we teamed up with Mentor Police Chief Ken Gunch and Fire Chief Bob Searles to share our safety practices with school leaders from all across Ohio at the annual OSBA conference. It is an honor to be selected to present in Columbus, and it was an even bigger honor that our chiefs joined us. Thank you both. A couple other quick topics I want to mention. Having a positive, healthy culture and climate in Mentor schools is as important now as ever. This year, we expanded our Gallup work to include parents and students. We started to dive into the results of those surveys with leaders from both groups this year, and we'll continue putting special care into this work next year. Our partnership with Mentor Public Library grew even stronger this year as the hub opened up for a fourth night of the week, operating as a branch, which benefits our students and community members. Next year, we're excited that because of this connection, we're rolling out library cards to all of our students. That is an example of just one of so many partnerships we have with local organizations and businesses, and we are so thankful for those relationships and support. Finally, dynamic storytelling through the use of video continues to be a focus for us, which is illustrated beautifully on Cardinal TV YouTube. And as always, every day and crisis communications will continue to be a top priority. This year, the coronavirus pandemic led to the need for crisis communication practices and many follow-ups. You can continue to count on us to provide information in a timely, clear manner, always. Thank you. I'll hand it back to Mr. Porter now.
As we look back on the past year and look forward to the next year, I feel blessed to be part of Mentor Schools. This planning is critical to help us keep our focus, regardless of the unexpected disruption we experienced this year or any other challenge that lies ahead. Thank you for your support of Mentor Schools. Take care and be well. So I apologize for the broken up sound at times, but to make up for that, we do have some of our presenters here with us. If you have any questions or anything you want to share?
I love the new website. I think it looks great.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're very proud of it.
A lot of detail involved, but you know, it underscores again that cooperative spirit. There are so many people who have to do their best and teaming with their clusters of experts at every level to make things work. And I thought about that so much when we had to go to distance learning in March, that it wouldn't have been possible to make it work as smoothly as it did if all that hadn't been in place. And I'm grateful for the work that so many individuals have contributed to make it best for our kids.
Some people are on mute still, Mike.
They have to unmute themselves, so bottom left.
Got it.
corner.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. We can hear you now.
All right. Mrs. Bonas, I have a question for you. You know, I love curriculum. You mentioned in your presentation about working on improving monitoring goals. Are you and your committee developing processes or additional instruments to do that? Can you talk about that a little bit more? You're muted, dear.
Ms. Bonas, yes. Cool.
Yes, so we are in our reading and math improvement plans, we're developing this year adult monitoring tools for improving the implementation of the professional development that we've been providing. In addition, I know that RTI processes, I know that the special ed department has been working on that as well too. So improving those processes at the high school level, we are putting in some more intervention procedures and supports, especially at the high school level with math next year, and working on developing extra supports for reading as well.
Thank you.
Is there a change in the third grade reading guarantee process? I know there's some new legislation that'll probably come up in Tom's report, but do you know kind of where we are with third grade reading?
As of right now, you know, the testing was not, as of right now, I don't think that there's any changes at this point of time, so.
But this year, there was a waiver. Schools were allowed to pass someone on because they couldn't give the test this year. If they felt like the third grade reading was up to par. It'll be interesting to see if that waiver is also given next year. But in terms of the overall policy, like Mrs. Bonas said, that is not changed. That could go back to being how it originally was, potentially in the future.
It should be interesting what happens in fall, you know, with regards to those fall third grade reading assessments. So we'll see if those get delayed as well.
Will there be a report card in September from the state level? Or do they suspend all of that?
I think they suspended all the testing. So I don't know, Mr. Porter, if you've heard anything about the report card itself.
Not that I can, not specifically. Anything else? Okay.
I thought that was well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
I'm glad all of these folks were involved. Made it that much better. As I move on, Mr. President and members of the board, I am recommending approval of agenda item C1 related to certified personnel and C2 through C3, all related to human resource matters. I am also recommending approval of agenda item D related to administrative personnel.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll. Unmute yourself, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
I need to abstain on the vote.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
Thank you. Before I end my portion of tonight's agenda, I do want to share some comments from the heart. Last week, we celebrated in a beautiful way the graduation of our 600 seniors. I'm exceptionally grateful to those who helped to make that possible, and I'm so proud of the seniors and their families who rose above the challenges of COVID to celebrate the accomplishments of the class of 2020. However, last week also weighed heavy on me and probably many of you as we witnessed another senseless death in our country and the outpouring of emotions that followed. George Floyd's avoidable and tragic death underscores a problem of systemic racism, which still permeates our society. In my role, I feel a particular call to duty to not just protect our students, but to inspire and empower them. I want all of our students to feel accepted, safe, and valued. And while our district has made progress with our work in the areas of diversity, inclusion, and equity, there's still more that we need to do and need to do better. Mentor Schools is committed to being part of the solution, working with over 7,500 4 to 18-year-olds every year. We have a unique opportunity to have a profound impact on the advancement of equality, understanding, and justice. As a district, we have an ethical responsibility to hope, build trust, and strive for equal treatment for all. Providing a high quality education for all the children of our community goes far beyond academics. We have the privilege to be part of shaping important life lessons for our youth, including teaching kindness and compassion and what it takes to be good friends, good neighbors, and good people. Certainly, we live in an imperfect world, but we have a golden opportunity to help the next generation learn from our past mistakes and work together to drive meaningful change. Thank you. And that concludes my portion of tonight's agenda.
Thanks for saying that, Mr. Porter. I think we all need to hear that. And we are definitely in the business of educating and teaching children critical thinking, and including that is dealing with issues of racism.
Beautifully stated. So eloquent. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, that's exactly the direction that needs to come from public schools and even private schools. It's unfortunate that it has come to that, but it's important that it has come to that because we have to help the students learn what they don't learn at home and from the media and all the other outsources that are inadequate. It just creates and promotes. So I support that concept, Bill, tremendously. We need to do the best we can, and all students need to know they're equal and equal in the eyes of their fellow students and everybody in the community. Just treated with respect. And yeah, it's sad. It's sad that we've come to this point. There's too many adults that distract from what the children should learn. And it's up to us to do it fairly and without malice or actually and forgetting, leaving it out. We need to address it. It's more, education today is much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. In the whole concept of what we do in the Mentor Public Schools does that and will reach more. So I commend you, Bill, for the direction you've taken and your staff. I can't be more proud of the direction the school system has gone. So thank you, you and your staff.
Thank you so much for doing this, but I agree with Mr. Tom that we are at a time when we have to say these things. But I think that's the beauty of public institution. And thank you, Mr. Porter, for making this a statement. I think that was really important as the leader of the public school. Thanks.
Thank you.
If there are no more comments, let's move on to agenda item 7, Board of Education report and recommendations. Section A, business, nomination, and election of vice president.
I nominate Ginny Jesselning for vice president.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes,
Buckley.
thank
Yeah.
you.
It makes it unanimous.
Next on the agenda is the permanent improvement presentation. Mr. Porter.
Thank you. It's back to me. I'm actually going to combine 2 and 3. Permanent improvement presentation will sort of naturally move into the technology presentation as well. Good evening again, Mr. President, members of the board. There will be a presentation popping up, I think, on the screen here in a moment. So let me wait to make sure that comes up. Thank you. Good evening again. As an addition 2 years ago to our board policies, I want to share information tonight about our 5-year permanent improvement plan and our 5-year technology plan. Mr. Wilson and I have reviewed these together and feel these are reflective of our financial needs in these 2 major areas over the next 5 years. Each year now, we present these to identify our coming needs. Specifically, we will identify capital needs over the next 5 years at our buildings, on our property, and capital enhancements needed at Mentor High, as well as vehicle replacements in the district, our continued furniture replacement needs, and our expected instructional technology purchases. Jen Skulski, Mike Lynch, Jeff Casella, Rick Kolar, and Jeremy Woodworth have all helped a lot to develop the plan you will see tonight. First, our permanent improvement plan. It's important to note that we all agree that we have a standard for maintaining our properties and facilities well, and to keep them in good working order. Even if not everything is brand new, it's important to keep our facilities and properties safe, visually appealing and clean, and comfortable for students, staff, and the greater school community. Mrs. Skulski and her staff have spent time looking at different aspects of each district-owned facility and property to determine the condition of certain elements, ranging from boilers to roofs, and from flooring inside buildings to paving outside the buildings, just as examples. Based on the findings, conditions are rated. Those areas that are deemed more critical will likely end up within the 5-year replacement or repair forecast cycle. Some costs for replacement during some of the years will naturally be more than other years, as it depends on the size and expense of jobs for a given year. It's also expected that some of the replacements may be more visible to a visitor or observer, while others, like roofs or window replacements, may not be quite as obvious. For fiscal year 20, which we are currently finishing up, and you can see on the screen, our biggest expense is the roof replacement at Ridge, which takes up the lion's share of the almost $1.3 million budget. Large projects like roof replacements are more cost-effective if done as one large job rather than breaking it up over 2 or 3 years. So sometimes you'll see some bigger numbers pop up if the whole project is targeted for 1 year. You'll also notice that on the next several pages we view, the bottom 2 items under each column will read straight A sustainability and emergency reserve, each for 100,000. Straight A line refers to funds that are used to purchase replacement furniture in our schools, along with furthering the innovation that began 6 years ago. The emergency reserve is allocated each year to serve as funding for any unexpected repairs or replacements that we could not anticipate, as sometimes happens with facilities. As we move to the next slide, fiscal year 21, the bulk of the expense would be a roof replacement for Mentor High, which is still on track. That's a big one. We also have almost $698,000 projected for controls, which is basically the heating and cooling systems. And in some buildings, it includes the lighting systems. As we go over to fiscal year 22, the most noteworthy expense is the paving at Mentor High School, which of course has the largest parking lot areas. Costs, if we go to the next slide, costs are more significant in fiscal year 23, as most of that budget, about 3.5 million, would cover the replacement of doors and windows at Mentor High School. And in fiscal year 24, it's Shore Middle School's turn for a roof replacement, as 968,000 is set aside, would be set aside for that project. And in fiscal year 25, Hopkins Elementary will have the roof replacement for 916,000, along with some other smaller projects you see. And then if you go to the next slide, this slide shows the capital project totals that were anticipated last year in the 5-year forecast and the project totals anticipated this year. And you can see an increase based on some shifting costs for the 2021 year, but quite a decrease for the 2022 year. And 2023 and 2024 have not changed at all, but could adjust a bit as we get closer. And obviously we did not include 2025 in last year's projections, but it's important to keep track of this because each year we'll add a year to our 5-year forecast, and we'll sort of look to see, how far off we are with some of our projections, which will, when we study that, sometimes it'll help us project better even later on. The next slide shows the vehicle replacement plan for the district. Here again, we look out over the next 5 years. And not noted here, aside from the fleet of 78 buses we have, which we replace 5 every year at a cost of about almost $100,000 per bus, we have about 20 other vehicles in the district that assist us in a variety of ways. And you can see that basic new vans would run in the $30,000 to $40,000 range, while a specialized box truck or refrigerated truck, in the years that we would purchase them, would be over $100,000 each. Next, I also want to make sure as we move on to the next slide that we're aware of capital enhancements identified for our Mentor High School campus. Mr. Casella began working on this a few years ago with Jen Skolsky, Jason Crow, and some others as part of a phased plan that kicked off with construction of a girls' varsity softball field this past year. And as you can see, when you drive by the new field, it is beautiful, but sadly, our first official game will have to wait until the spring of 2021 due to COVID. We are also going out to bid soon on our restroom concession building that will be on the grass between the varsity soccer lacrosse field and the varsity girls softball field. And as you look at the yet to be completed phases 2 through 6, you can see much more is planned along the way, all of it in a very logical way. Phase 2's biggest project is the replacement of the track, which, except for this time of COVID, gets really high traffic from both our student athletes and the public. The softball field, this one though would be made of grass, would go next to the new one that has been built. Phase 3 would allow us to complete some of the other grass fields for the variety of teams we have. But the biggest cost would be a new weight training facility by the stadium, which we already know gets used by a majority of both boys and girls sports teams now. Phase 4 would add a new plaza and gate entry to the football stadium. Phase 5 includes a variety of additional upgrades inside and around the football stadium. And Phase 6 addresses additional parking spaces and improvements for handling cars. So for all of these phases, which are subject to change if the budget may necessitate, we're all focusing heavily on making sure we are addressing equity for boys and girls sports, as well as efficiency in scope and plan. Laying this whole plan out at once and addressing it in phases has allowed us to plan for campus upgrades that are coordinated and flow with each other. And we can go to the next slide. For example, the girls varsity press box that was built this year is designed to also serve the girls JV softball field that will be built to it next year. The press box has windows on both sides to allow for this. And here is where, in this drawing, you can see the new restroom concession building where that will stand when that gets constructed this year. If you study the map, it's not too far. The white in the lower left corner is our current administration building. And the next slide is actually the concept drawing of what it'll look like. So it has concession stand, also with windows on both sides. So parents who are serving concessions can also look out over both fields to see the games. And on the left side of that picture, you can see that's where the restrooms would be. And in between, there's a roof covering the whole thing. In between is a picnic area with some picnic tables. So a covered sort of shelter, if you will. And so we're working with the city to get the final design approved for this. And then the next slide, this slide and the next one are overhead shots that show where some of the other projects will be. And then if we go past even this slide, one more slide, there's an artist rendering of the new weight room facility. And that's pretty far down the road. So that's very much subject to change. But I can tell you that looks a whole lot different than what it looks like inside there now. So for the capital needs and the capital enhancements, we have, and you can go to the next slide, Mike, we have several current, include 1.1 collected annually from the permanent improvement levy, some funding that came directly out of the permanent improvement fund as a result of the sale of former school buildings or properties. And those examples are like most recently the sales of Brentmore and Rice. We also took a portion of the underspending of the general budget this past year and a portion of the over collection of revenue from the general fund for this year to help the projects we are finishing up. As we look toward the future of these projects, next slide, it's also important to consider other options if needed. And these include increasing the current PI fund, creating a new PI fund, passing a bond issue, soliciting donations or naming rights to facilities, and possibly even generating some funds through fundraisers. And then very much going hand in hand with this is our technology plan. And similar to the permanent improvement plan, the technology plan, largely put together by Mr. Lynch and Mr. Woodworth, takes a 5-year look ahead at our needs with technology. The pages shared with you break this up by level, high school, middle school, elementary school, and even include technology in miscellaneous areas of the district. We also have a slide that reflects our 5-year plan for finishing our current cycle of furniture replacement. This first page shows the years to the far left, but the second column shows the total cost of projected new equipment. Since we also have a buyback program for our high school MacBooks and middle school iPads after an established number of years of use, it's more accurate to move to the far right column on that first page to see what the actual budgeted need is after the buyback takes place. Next page, when looking at this high school page, it's important to note that replacement costs are based on each class's current enrollment. It also assumes we will get 4 to 5 years of life out of the MacBook Air, which is the device used at Mentor High School and for all teaching and administrative staff in the district. And if you go to the next page, the middle school page, you will notice a high replacement cost in the 23-24 year due to the need to replace staff devices. But for student devices, we can assume a 3-year life for the iPad before we enter it back into the buyback program. And then the next page is the elementary, where the costs escalate the most during the last 2 years of the 5-year cycle. In 22-23, I'm sorry, during the 23 and 24 years, it escalates. 23, we have major purchases for kindergarten through 2nd grade for iPads. And in 23-24, the major replacement occurs for 3rd through 5th graders for Chromebooks they use. And then the next page is the other technology. And you will notice that their cycle peaks the most during the 2021 year, due to the middle school Project Lead the Way devices. And in 24-25, as a result of keeping our infrastructure strong by replacing our wireless network switches. Also part of the technology plan is our 5-year furniture replacement plan, which is the final page of the technology packet. And you'll notice that this plan allows us to finish a cycle of furniture upgrades in the district, including 2nd grade and younger grades, art, and our middle schools. 21-22 is our biggest year of expense as we finish both the kindergarten and 1st grade in that same year. So next page. I think as we look at the plans for technology and the furniture, a few themes continue. One again is equity and the other is efficiency. We want to make technology available to all of our students in our district and to our cycle that can continue into the future and can remain flexible as innovations change. We always have to allow for that. This also eliminates the need to fix and replace technology that no longer serves us well. And in many cases, we can recoup value for that. As we have students enrolled, which makes sense and makes us efficient now and moving forward. And at this time, I want to, we can pull down the presentation. I want to give Mr. Wilson a chance to add any comments he would like to add, or also any questions or comments from Mr. Lynch or Mrs. Skolsky.
This is the first of our rolling 5-year updates. And as Bill did with the first section on capital spending, we will provide a full summary tracking last year's plan for the last 4 years compared to our updated based on known events that have changed, and continue to build the cost into our 5-year forecast and our budget as we've revised formulas for revenue projections and salary and benefit projections. We are seeing less of an underspending or over collection. There's still some, but as the one slide illustrated, we will reach a point of having to decide to continue to use operating dollars to support capital needs, or to talk about an independent funding source, whether it's a new PI levy or a bond issue or something that's restricted only for capital spending. But this is, again, the first year of the update as we planned, and is very valuable as we look out into the future.
You know, back when we began the process of substituting digital technology for traditional textbooks and transferring those funds, I think of how it always feels for a student to have a brand new textbook to use, one that's in good shape. It's, you know, obviously the information's current, you know, it includes the changes in geography or for history, whatever. And I think the same spirit is brought to the device maintenance and replacement, that all of us know what it's like to use an aging piece of equipment, whether it's your cell phone starts to act wonky, or, you know, the software that you're trying to load doesn't fit anymore or doesn't work efficiently. That by having this common sense plan to buy and then recycle aging technology, we're supplying our students and our teachers with devices that are reliable, consistently and that don't get in the way of learning. There's nothing more aggravating than having the technology fail to do its job for the process. So I'm so grateful for this overarching plan, because I think it makes a huge difference in just promoting the efficiency, which is one of the words that you used in the presentation, Bill. That efficiency is so key, and making sure that the network is functioning smoothly, all of those pieces. I'm so grateful for that planning and leadership, because it lets us do what we need to do on behalf of kids.
Penny, I so appreciate your comments about the technology. It's something that Mr. Woodworth, myself, and our entire IT department has stressed over the last year and a half, that we look at not just every single device in our district, but every single piece of technology equipment that helps us run not just instructionally, but our management of the district as well. And we've put every piece of equipment on a 3, 4, or 5-year cycle, so that we will not be taking the time and the energy and thus being less efficient, but instead using our dollars well and making sure that those devices are on a plan of every 3, 4, or 5 years. And so I certainly do appreciate your recognition of that and your comments.
Anyone else?
I just want to appreciate that Mentor School provide devices for every student. Like before, we never thought we'll come to a point where we will be dependent on the online school. And I think Mentor School was really ready with every student has a device, that I don't see a problem of the transition from being face-to-face to online schooling. So I'm so glad that every student had a device and we didn't have any glitches or anything. The transition was very smooth. Like as a parent, I was very happy that the Mentor Schools provide devices for every student.
Ms. Hassan, thank you very much for that comment. We agree, and we're even going to do it better next time if we have to, because we are preparing this summer to make sure, as Mr. Porter reported earlier, in our elementary schools, we passed out 1,200 of about 3,200 devices. But if we were to go back to the same or a similar situation in the fall, we are prepared that every single student, all 7,500 of our students, will be going home with their devices. So we're going to be doing some things this summer. We've already started in the last 2 weeks in taking all of the iPads and Chromebooks in our elementary schools and having them ready to go home with the students, even on the first day of school, so that they have chargers to go home and stay at home with them, so that they can charge them and have them ready to come back to school. So we have spent the last 5 years getting to this point so that we were prepared, but now I even think we're going to be more prepared from our learning experiences over the last 3 months.
So that concludes my report. If there are no further questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Section B, legislative report, Mr. Tuttle.
Thank you. So you all received the opportunity to read it ahead of time. I'm going to read to you as well, if you hadn't read it. I'm not going to cover all the points, but I'm going to start with page 1. The State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Paulo Di Maria, and a diverse group of stakeholders representing all facets of education have been developing a planning guide titled Reset and Restart. The guide will assist school districts with planning and delivering instruction in the 2021 school year. In a letter, Di Maria states, to assure coherence, the group is considering tools and resources that have emerged locally across the state. The intent is to honor and build on those local level efforts, respecting the importance of and need for local decision-making. The Reset and Restart Planning Guide is expected to be released soon. Can everybody hear me? I'm not muted, right?
No.
Okay. Yes, you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, released considerations that K through 12 schools should plan for when determining how to reopen. The considerations focus on social distancing, promoting behaviors that reduce the spread of the disease, and maintaining healthy environments and operations. The CDC stated that these considerations are meant to supplement, not replace, any state, local, territorial, or tribal health and safety laws, rules, and regulations with which schools must comply. So I'm not clear what exactly they're going to help with there, if they're going to leave it up to us, which is a good thing. I continue. House Speaker Larry Householder announced several pieces of legislation that the chamber is focused on moving before the planned mid-June departure. They're going on vacation. Included in that list was House Bill 239, a bill that revises high school state testing requirements and requires each school district to form a working group to evaluate the amount of time students spend on testing. Interesting topic. Additionally, the bill makes optional instead of mandatory the ACT or SAT and extends the third grade reading guarantee moratorium for the 2021 school year. Householder made the following remarks regarding House Bill 239. We think it's important for teachers to be able to teach and students be able to learn. We're so busy worrying about what kids know, we don't give them the chance to learn. Representative Gail Manning made the following statement on the House floor. We've heard from parents, educators, and our local school board members that we need to reduce the state testing. That's exactly what this bill would do. The House on May 28 passed the bill by a vote of 78-14, and it's now in the Senate. I believe it's still in the Senate. Interesting. How long, Bill, have we been talking about testing? Jenny?
Reducing state testing. Oh, I don't know if I can remember so far back as to when we weren't asking about that.
I think
What is
it took COVID to elevate the conversation to this point, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. The House also prioritized House Bill 194, a bill that legalizes and regulates sports gaming and earmarks 98% of the sports gaming profits for education. Woohoo! Bill sponsor Bridget Kelly stated on the House floor that by passing amended House Bill 194, we will create a legal, closely monitored industry and a pathway to increase funding for education in the state. House Bill 194 passed the House by a vote of 83-10 and is now in the Senate. The Senate also has a bill, Senate Bill 111, that regulates and levies a tax on sports wagering. Wow. I know this is not considered a sin tax, but this is one of those addictions that the state also, in gambling, the state funds counseling for those who have a gambling addiction. So let's get more to gamble, get more gambling, get more addictions, and put more money in that, and just increase employment in some addiction again, expand an addiction of gambling to children. I mean, it's out of control, but just for tax dollars. And
Tom,
some of you have heard me talk about this before. All they do is chase more money, more money, more money, more money. And they take away from schools, don't they?
Yes, they do.
I
Yes.
was just going to add, Tom, that in 1974, when the first lottery constitutional amendment was passed, it was dedicated to school funding, and for the first 12 years, it was in a separate fund that was provided schools. And then after that, it just became part of the state's general revenue budget. And what we saw was that increase in revenue allowed them to decrease traditional funding to schools. About 10 years ago, maybe a little more than 10 years ago, when casinos were authorized in the state of Ohio, 1/3 of casino profits are dedicated to schools, but we saw the same thing happen, that as that new revenue source came in, there was less funding from the traditional line 501 of the state revenue budget. And I'm fearful that this will be the third time now that they will say it's to fund education, but won't truly result in increased funding.
I would agree. So do we look forward to that? Do we speak up or what should we do, Bill? I mean, Dan?
Well, I do think we have to speak up to see if more and more states are authorizing this type of gambling. So I believe it probably will happen in Ohio, but to the extent that we can, in the Senate or in conference committee, get some restrictions on it can't replace existing funding. Again, as the original lottery program did, it was a separate pot of money that was distributed to schools and could not be used in lieu of the traditional funding.
Right.
So absolutely, I think we need to engage in the Senate for advocating for that. And I know that both the Ohio School Boards Association, the Buckeye Association of School Administrators, and the Ohio Association of School Business Officials are all also supporting that concept of providing some safeguards from it simply replacing existing school funding.
Well, in the lottery funding, when it first was put on the ballot, it was designated to fund schools, period. And that's why the citizens voted for it.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's
They
exactly
used
right.
it as a carrot to get it to pass. You're right.
Yeah.
Let me add one more. This is not my opinion, but facts state the greatest contribution to the lottery is out of Cuyahoga County, Ohio. The #1 place. They collect more revenue from the residents of Cuyahoga County. I'm not going to say it's racist, but the poorest of our population contributes more to the lottery than people of higher wage income who don't play it. It's a fact. How many of you have ever gone into a convenience store and watched an elderly person take out his or her wallet or coin purse and count out the coins to buy a lottery ticket? And they go in every week or whenever they get their income and they play it, and they'll play the same numbers over and over again. They've made it so simple for those people who gamble. Just here's the ticket, run it through again. Here's my $5. Here's my $5. They prey on the addicted. They prey on the addicted. I'm sorry, I get off track here, but they prey on the addicted smokers. They prey on the addicted alcoholics. They prey on the addicted drug people. So anyway, I digress.
I like it. Get on your social roles, Tom. You go.
Yeah.
That's right. After all those years for Lake Geauga recovery, you would have seen it up close.
Well, I saw the people who are addicted.
And how they struggle.
It does take drugs and alcohol. They reach across all avenues, but the lottery primarily is preying on people who truly can't afford it. I know that for a fact. The stats prove it out. The Lottery Commission knows it, and they won't do anything about it. Okay, next.
Do we know more about, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your flow.
No,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
ask about House Bill 635, our Representative John Rogers' proposal. I think that has to do with community school or charter schools
Yes,
having to have a higher quality that they have to meet. Do you know anything more about, that's just proposed, it's not.
yeah, I don't know anything other than I didn't read it or review it, but I saw John and John Patterson, John Rogers and John Patterson. They work really well together. And I'm not surprised they both done this because it's really in John Rogers' wheelhouse. He's so good. And what he's attempting to do there, I don't know if he's going to get a vote in his favor, but it's in the right direction. It's in the right
Definitely. Excellent. Thanks.
direction. Okay. Next on that same page, recently introduced legislation. What did I want to read here? Some Representative Lisa Sobetsky, she's been very busy. I don't know how long she's been a representative, but she's got a list of things going on, and which is good. Well, she's active. What other issues here? Well, interesting, she introduced a bill to allow the installation of protective barriers in school buses using rules adopted by the Director of Public Safety. She also introduced to allow the Board of Education to not plan its transportation schedule based on the start and end times of non-public schools to which it is required to transport, and to require chartered public, non-public schools and community schools to provide transportation. That might be in the right direction. Maybe they're going to contribute for their own transportation. She also introduced to exempt boards of education from transporting elementary or high school pupils to and from a non-public or community school that is located outside of the school district's territory. Transporting does that, would that include St. John Vianney?
Yes.
Would not receive our transportation? Correct?
All Saints, you mean?
All Saints, yeah, All Saints School, which is in Wickliffe.
That's how I'm reading it.
So I'm another pro or con on that. It's like she's very active, which is a good thing. And this here's somewhat of a bailout. Rep. Brian Baldridge, Republican out of Winchester, a bill to require an additional state payment in fiscal year 2020 or 2021 to certain school districts that experience a specified decrease in the taxable value of the district's utility tangible personal property.
Is that the Perry nuclear plant?
Correct.
Right, and the other power plant. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah, Bessie. Yes, there's a couple of them.
It's a bailout. They did the law, and now they're going to bail those people out with another source of money. So,
Well, proposal.
does that make sense, Dan? I mean, is that right? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are reading it correctly.
Yeah. So they worked hard to give the tax break to keep the power plants running, and now those school districts are going to get bailed out with a check.
From the state general fund, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be lottery money.
Yes,
It's there.
it's
There.
just a proposal. So
Right. You never know. And they're going to be on recess soon, so hard to say what'll happen to it.
Yep. And then Rep. Golansky out of Akron, she introduced a bill to revise Ohio's drug offense law as it applies to employment and the attendance at public schools, preschools, and Head Start agencies. Yeah, I don't have any further information on that. Then she also introduced a bill to amend the distance a driver is required to stop for a stop school bus from 10 to 20 feet. I guess that's good. Who's going to measure 20 feet? What if it's 15? But 20 feet at least doubles it, and maybe you'll actually get people to stop 10 feet.
I think the cameras that were installed were the most effective.
For
That was-
passing, yeah,
that was a critically important safety feature I appreciate was added last year.
yeah, I agree.
What tickets were given based on the cameras?
I'm not sure. There were some though. Do we have a stat on that?
I thought there were 90.
Yeah, we had data. I don't have it at my fingertips, but there were a lot of citations issued. Now, it doesn't happen every single time because there has to be a certain combination of information gathered, at the time. Besides the video, the driver, I believe, has to be able to identify a face and, and some, elements of the car. But there were a number of tickets given. So and again, the goal is not for us to catch people so much as it is to raise awareness so that people are stopping. And even talking about it right here is another opportunity to raise awareness. So,
Yes.
There've been too many close calls, and I know it makes the drivers nervous, because they're responsible for giving the kids the signal to cross. So the pressure on them, if they can't reliably count on drivers to obey the law. I don't know how you could miss a giant yellow bus with flashing lights and
And the stop sign.
and a big stop sign that swings out. We really do have a pretty good system set up to help everybody know what the expectations are. And there's,
Well-
are they gonna have to repaint the back of the buses that say stay back? Because it says 10 feet on the bus, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna have to
At the
buy
bank, yeah.
$10,000 worth of stickers. Can you take a Sharpie out and turn that into a 2?
That'd be nice. It won't be a sticker. They'll have to paint it on. They'll have to paint that.
Well,
one
I
into-
volunteer to get my brush and some paint and help out. Glad to turn a 1 into a 2. It's easy to do that. It's not perfect, but it's easy.
So State Rep Galansky also introduced a bill to require school employees authorized by a Board of Education who convey a deadly weapon to complete a course of advanced firearms training taught by an expert. Makes sense. If they need to have a requirement like that, I would guess, definitely. And I'm going to skip forward. We already did the high school graduation. I mean, there's a section in here about that. Senate Bill 317, introduced by Senator William Coley, to expressly exempt the requirement that peace officer basic training be obtained by certain employees that a Board of Education authorized to go armed in a school safety zone. So I'm not sure how that differentiates, or the two should be put together regarding completing a course of advanced firearms training taught by an expert should obviously include basic training. What do you think? Requirement that peace officer basic training be obtained. Put them both together. And that's it. We covered quite a few points. One thing I noticed in reading this, they certainly were busy about schools. With the throw in there about gaming, raising money for schools. Okay.
Right.
That's
Thank
it.
you, thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Agenda item 8, Chief Financial Officer's report and recommendations. Mr. Wilson.
Yes, I recommend the Board of Education approve agenda items 8A through 8E as presented.
So moved.
Second,
And I would just point out that the revenue year to date is at 100.6%, and we're not going to land much higher than that because of the reduction in state funding. And on the expense side, we're tracking to last year's expense level. We do have some large encumbrances to be there, but we do anticipate a favorable budget year on the expense side.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
All right, and next I ask the board to approve agenda item F, which is approving a modification to my joint shared treasurer contract with Newberry Schools. Of this is that
Bless you.
Newberry was kind enough to provide some additional compensation for the additional work that I performed. And because my employment status is a joint status with the two districts, we need to approve this. There's no expense or cost to Mentor Schools, but this will allow Newberry to fund their action to recognize some additional effort that I put in down.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
And thanks for your hard work, Mr. Wilson. A
Well,
few extra dollars. You need to do, we have 1.9 million to make up for the cover. I don't know if Newberry has a few more things.
it's yes, quite an adventure. Next, I ask the board to approve agenda item 8G, which is the 2020-2021 Mentor Public Library tax budget. As the board knows, we do this every year and must be filed with the Lake County Budget Commission by early July. Because they are organized as a public school district library system, we have responsibilities for approving their tax budget, their annual operating budget, and appointing trustees. So again, this was approved by the library trustees, and this is the last step so we can file it.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It was Mrs. Briner moved and
Mrs. Hassan
Yeah.
seconded.
Great. Thank you, Ken. I needed that help.
you're welcome. Call
We
the
love
roll.
the library, so we all jumped in.
Yeah. Please
Oh,
call the
that
roll.
partnership is just wonderful for the hub. Oh, my gosh.
Fantastic. They just have done a great job.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
Next, I ask the Board of Education to approve the restatement of a 403B retirement plan as presented due to some changes in IRS regulations. This is one of the providers for tax deferred saving accounts to employees. We are the plan sponsor, and this will allow for compliance with the change in IRS regulations. This is a voluntary program. There is no direct cost to the Board of Education other than the normal administrative cost associated with payroll.
Yeah, that's their contribution. Is that right, Dan?
Correct.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tuttle,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
Yes.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.
That completes my items for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business before the board? Hearing none. Next agenda item is new business. I would just like to ask a question. Mr. Wilson, Mr. Porter, are there any plans to have Mrs. Hassan come in for an update like we have done in the past for new board members?
Yes, I've just finished updating the materials we've used to help orient new board members. I will be sharing those with Bill tomorrow. I shared with Ann Breen that we will be scheduling her hopefully next week to provide her a lot of supporting documentation and do that orientation program.
Okay, thank you. Ann Breen, please feel free to call any one of us with questions.
Absolutely.
We absolutely want to, make it as smooth transition for you as possible. And once again, welcome. We are so pleased to have you join us.
Thank you so much.
And Ken, we do have under new business a request, as we do every year, to hold a brief year-end meeting to authorize me with last-minute adjustments to be able to close the fiscal year books. So if you recall, typically it's a 15-minute, not more than half-hour meeting. And I would ask that the board select a time as close to the end of the month as possible.
Okay, you want to check your calendars?
I would hope.
This would be a Zoom meeting, right?
Correct.
I can do Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 29th. Well, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 29th through the 31st in the evening works for me, any of those days.
All right, this is the test, right? I don't think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on July. If I had the right month, it would be much better, wouldn't it? Okay, so you're looking at Monday or Tuesday, the 29th or 30th would be your preference?
The 30th, the 29th is our last Newberry board meeting. So either Friday the 26th or Tuesday the 30th, if that's possible.
I can do either.
Works for me.
Too.
I'm good.
Tom, what works for you? You're on mute.
I burped. I didn't want you to hear me burp.
Okay,
You're very, very,
Thanks for telling us, Tom.
thank you.
your decorum is such a treat.
Is the 30th?
No, I didn't burp. I'm just joking, of course.
How's the
Yeah.
26th, Tom?
26th or the 30th is good. Either
All
day.
right.
Dan, I can't do the 26th. My daughter's getting married that weekend.
Oh, Lord.
Oh,
So
Wonderful.
is the
30th
30th
is great.
okay? And
30th.
Is the 30th okay for everyone?
yes.
Fine.
Yep.
5:30, 6 o'clock. What, Mary, 6 o'clock for you, right?
5:15 to 5:30 works for me.
Okay.
We'll do 5:30 gives her,
Yeah. Is everybody okay with 5:30 on the 30th?
But
Yeah.
5:30 or
I'm good.
5:15, Mary? What do you want?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. 5:30?
Yeah.
yeah.
very good. I thank you very much
Um,
for that.
Mr. Porter, who will send the invitation? Will that be you or Mike?
It would be one of the two of us.
Okay,
Mike and I will talk after this meeting and figure that out.
all right.
Does that have to be something that Jack A. Locke puts out as a,
Yes, it's an official
Sunshine.
special meeting and we do the sunshine notice. And
gotcha,
we'll probably wait a little bit just to be certain there isn't some other need for an action item. As you know, for a special meeting, we're restricted to actions as advertised in the sunshine notice. So I don't anticipate anything else, but we always wait until near the board meeting to actually do it, just in case.
what would be wonderful is if maybe by the 30th, Bill has begun to kind of frame what he thinks the fall is going to look like. That would be maybe a pipe dream based on the expediency of the information flowing in from the sources that you need to go by. But that would be wonderful if maybe that would be something you could share with us then, if you have it.
Can
I'm
we
not
talk
sure.
about that in a special meeting, Dan?
Pardon?
Are we able to talk about that in a special meeting?
Yeah, as long as we advertise that as one of the purposes for the meeting, we can't
Okay,
do it unless it's part of the official notice.
all right.
Because that's 2 full weeks before our regular board meeting, so it's kind of nicely placed in the middle. If he's got something to share, it may not
Right.
be known by then, but that would be great if it is.
And having held a wedding for my daughter, that's a very long, lengthy weekend. So if Mr. Porter does not have the information, there is not an expectation that.
Oh,
No.
no. No. That's a very good point.
Yes, very good point, Ken.
And again, barring some other needs, the only agenda items would be associated with closing the fiscal year end. So those are things I typically take the lead on. So,
Okay,
we'll try to be sensitive to Bill and prepare the agenda and the necessary action items.
And
All right.
again, a meeting and we don't get fed. You are saving money for the schools, Dan.
But the boards are
All they
automatically
do
invited.
is interviews and everything. Nothing
Take
to
it up to
eat.
you
that,
once more
Mary.
people to all be in the room together again.
It will be
I
very
can't wait.
nice to be
Is there-
together.
there any more new business?
Just
If
motion.
not, we are not moving to executive session, so could I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second,
Third,
Please call the roll, Mr. Wilson.
Mrs. Briner,
Yes.
Ms. Jisling,
yes.
Mrs. Hassan,
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle,
yes.
Mr. Buckley.
Yes.